So I played Everquest Legends, and I regret to inform you, the new version of Everquest is fucking addicting. Like, I put way too much time into it. It made my job suffer. That's where we're at with this. It's a nasty cocktail mix of rewarding, grinding, and power fantasy, and they've found a pretty damn good balance. So I was granted access to the Everquest Legends Beta, and while it's been a while since I felt addicted to playing an MMO, I actually didn't even know if I'd be able to make the video on this server until just a few days ago, as I was still against my better judgment putting hours upon hours into the game when I had other things I needed to be doing. I've already put over 50 hours into the game, probably around 60-ish, and I haven't been able to stop playing. Everquest Legends, for those who do not know, is a licensed Everquest version from Game John. It is licensed by Daybreak, so it is an official Daybreak product. It is a very casual, friendly version of Everquest where essentially you can mix and match 3 different classes. You'll be able to have personal instances. Zones have different difficulty levels, so you can pick different levels of how hard you want to make the game be. And it even has item combining, so you can take that shitty little rusty dagger and turn it into something worth using. My initial impressions can be summed up by saying the game is a fun grind designed to reward you for putting in hours. This is not a game that you play for a week and then you totally forget about it, and I think that's what's kind of cool. You don't just jump in and you're level 50 already. I think that was one of the things that really struck me, is it actually felt like an MMO. It felt like a game. You don't just jump ahead and kind of skip the line. After all of that time I put in, I still never got into a raid, for example. Talking about 50 hours of gameplay, and I was in lower Guck. But it's not just the experience that takes time. There's actually a pull for another grind in this, the item grind, itemization. Every item in the game can be combined together to get up to level 10 of that item, with each level taking more of those items to combine to get to that point. For example, it's 2 to get to +1, and then it's 32 to get to +6. There's basically 2 different ways to level up your item. Either you get another version of the exact same item with whatever plus on it, and it counts as many pluses as that is. So +4 is worth more than the +1, or there are little motes that you can get that are basically little freebie things that you can use to upgrade, although they're pretty rare above the level 1, so they're not hugely crazy to get, but they are another way to do it without having to grind the exact same item over and over again, and you get them just randomly through the game, killing anything, killing NPCs, non-named NPCs. The items themselves get stronger than what they were. Weapons get higher damage, items get better of the same stats that they already had. For example, an 8 AC, 9 Dexterity Dervish Cutthroat Ring. Why the hell not? With higher ranks of items, you can also remove their focus and add it to other items. For example, here you see my studded leather collar has the black alloy medallion focus on it because I leveled both up high enough to do so. Or this Torben's mystical eye patch someone else had with multiple exaltations on it from different masks. Itemization is more wide open as well, given that you have 3 classes, so you can mix and match, creating new possibilities, like a dual-wielding Shadow Knight, caster-only weapons on a tank. There's a lot of theory crafting and class building that's going to go into the game, especially when you also add in that they get some pretty powerful AAs. And this is all just in Classic. Once you get into further expansions, which this game does plan to do eventually, like Knark, Velius, maybe further than that, well, it's gonna get even crazier. But all of this power, all of this new player power is immensely helpful as you try the different difficulty settings for zones, which go from 0 difficulty all the way up to +4, which results in increased loot rewards and increased experience, though there's definitely diminishing returns on the experience because everything is, well, harder and takes longer to kill. So that +20% or so for going up a difficulty, it's not really gonna make that big a difference in experience, but the itemization is where you see a huge benefit of going into the higher difficulties. But here's the thing, in these increased difficulties, these enemies don't just have more HP, they don't just have more damage that they're doing, although they do have those, they can actually multi-class just like you. It's brain-breaking at first, I won't lie, because when you see stuff that really shouldn't go that way, classes that are not supposed to be on that type of mob, it kind of messes with you a little bit. Like, have you ever seen a snake with a pet? Okay. So, yeah, what the fuck? Well, now you have. So that's a thing that happens. There are other little quality of life things throughout the game that have been added, some small and some big. For example, Gather Party is a game-wide call of the hero, but it works at least right now on a 6-hour cooldown to maintain some of the size of the world, but it still lets you join your friends or strangers for raids or groups. Which, speaking of, yes, raiding and grouping is beneficial. Not only do you get much stronger, but loot itself is personal. Likely using the same personal loot that will be coming to the second progression server for the official Everquest later this year. So joining a raid, you're going to be getting your own loot, and so is everyone else. Same with groups in a contested area, of which most of the world is right now, although they have started during beta to introduce personal instances for some raid zones. This encourages grouping in a solo experience, especially with your friends. The groups I did get to do were great, and I actually had more fun doing those than really solo, even though the vast majority of my time was solo. They also have a nifty feature to sell your items directly from the loot window or store them if you want to. But even with this, you'll likely still end up with full bags regardless, given all that item combining and wanting to keep as many items as you can so you can just grind and level up. But it's nice to be able to just sell all the trash you don't need. Disciplines and spells that are necessary at early levels, like really early levels, you'll get just by leveling up. It's not going to be all the spells of those levels, and eventually this does stop and you'll need to go find spells yourself, which can be a bit time consuming with 3 different classes. For example, a druid and necromancer are not exactly close together when getting spells, at least at this point of the game. We don't have POK. There are some AAs that are unique and really quality of life friendly, like one called Quick Buff, which casts all of your memorized buffs at the same time. I found out about this AA like 40 hours in, and once I realized what it did, I was shocked that I didn't already have it, because it's just so helpful to buff 8 buffs all at the same damn time. There's even an option to turn on cast through healing like what they do in Everquest 2. With the option turned on, your heals will cast through the enemy target to whoever it's attacking. This could be yourself, it could be your pet, or someone in your group. No more need to stop attacking and retarget yourself to heal. I don't know about you, but when I played, I liked classes like the Necromancer and the Shadow Knight just because I didn't have to do that shit. Paladins sounded cool and everything, if a little bit too kind and nice, but they had to stop and target themselves to heal, and it felt very inefficient. That's not the problem here anymore. They've managed to create a version of Everquest that will reward you whether you play solo or as a group, and while balancing I'm sure will be a constant struggle for Everquest Legends. After all, during the beta, for example, pets seemed to be a weak spot, dying very quickly, and melee DPS outdid caster DPS in most places, given that melee had different stances that were very powerful, like doubling your melee damage or quadrupling your outgoing skills, which, for example, Berserker Frenzy and Monk Flying Kick was pretty crazy DPS for that. But I think this is where I saw the biggest issue. For people that want to play like a strict caster, that like that style of play, there's gonna be some difficulty, at least the way that this is designed, because it's not designed with that in mind. As it stands, that's not super viable to play that way, since you're kind of always tanking, especially when you get to the meat and potatoes of the game, raids. That is, unless you group up with people playing in more traditional tanking roles while you get to sit back and actually play like a wizard. Or if they add in some pet stances or something like that to make those pets tankier so they can tank for you while you stand back and throw fireballs. But to better explain how those classes work, well, you actually have a lot of flexibility. You start with one primary class and one secondary class, and at level 10, you unlock the third class. You will get everything from those classes, from AA to gear to spells to skills and disciplines. At level 11, your primary class locks, but you can mix and match other 2 classes in any city or starter zone, adding multiple different loadouts with different classes. But there's a catch. If you stick with 3 classes, all of them will always be the same level. But if you start swapping around, anytime you change, it will default to the lowest level class, and you'll have to level that up. Like you can see here on my loadout, classes I never used or rarely used are stuck at level 10, despite my primary class, Shadow Knight, being level 39, along with Mage and Druid. Other classes I use quite a bit, like Berserker and Monk, are at 24 or 23 respectively. If I swap Berserker out for Druid on my build, you drop down to level 24 with all 3 classes until you level up to, say, level 40. Then all 3 classes would be level 40. You just go down to the lowest level class in your 3-class loadout until they're all even. I was pleasantly surprised with EverQuest Legends across the board. Everything feels thoughtful and it feels like a full game. This doesn't feel sectioned off or siloed off, and there's people all around that you can talk to. Although I guess that might change with more of the solo instances coming in. But I really appreciate it as solo friendly, or really solo forward and casual forward as this game is. It still feels like EverQuest. It still feels like a game where grouping is beneficial. Leveling still takes time. Grinding gear still takes time. This is not face roll easy game, despite all of the quality of life and player power increases. It feels pretty well balanced between power fantasy and challenge, especially with the difficulty modes that let you kind of control what kind of difficulty you want to face. And if you've been around this channel for any amount of time, you know that I'm a huge advocate for overland difficulty modes, because I think it makes the game feel better, especially with games that have a very easy overland. Having ways to increase that difficulty if you want to and get better rewards for it is great, and I really sensed that while playing this game. I was excited when EverQuest Legends was first announced because it showed Daybreak was willing to go in some different directions, including licensing. Here's my obligatory Daybreak, if you're licensing shit, how about Champions of Norath 3? Lords of EverQuest 2. But this also allowed them to really revamp their game, more so than even progression servers. After playing it for way longer than I initially planned during the beta, I'm not only hopeful this will do well, I'm actually expecting it to. And I'm not the only one with its 30,000 plus beta signups. And perhaps most exciting of all for me, this is just the beginning. They don't plan to stop here at Classic, they plan to keep going. And I really want to see what kind of custom content they add. Like, they already have Kara and Froglocks as playable races, and playing Froglocks was fun, although I sadly couldn't create a Kara. What I really want to see is actual custom NPCs and zones. Time will tell if we get something like that, or if the leash on this server is too tight. But those are my experiences with EverQuest Legends in the beta, and I hope to play more of it once it fully launches. I just need to find a way to pull myself away from it and stop playing so I can go do other things until it launches later this year. I believe in July. My name is Redbird Flynn. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. And if you are applied for the beta, I hope you get in soon, because I know there's a lot of people still waiting. Thank you so much for watching.